Hey there, it's Shauna. I hope you're doing great. This is your weekly astrology forecast for September 4th. And this week is all about living the dream. And I'm calling it that because you may kind of feel like you're living in a dream this week. This week things may feel a little bit like they're falling together and then coming back together, and then things are like falling apart again, and then you're like, oh no, I got it, but then when you think you get it, it kind of like disintegrates. So the start of the week may feel a little bit more murky, and then towards the end of the week things will actually become more clear, and things will start to feel like they're moving forward again. So I'll share with you the astrology of this week and why that's happening, how you can use it, and then I have 3 tips for you to have an amazing week. So we have a really heavy Pisces and Neptune influence this week. And so there's shadow sides and light sides, unconscious and conscious sides of this. So whenever Pisces and Neptune are around, there can be a feeling of confusion or ambiguity, or just like even feeling a little bit more tired, but in general there's like typically a lack of boundaries and a lack of understanding what it is that needs to happen, or there can even be a certain level of being deceived, or being under a certain illusion that isn't necessarily reality. And so part of this is that we have the Sun opposite Neptune this week. And so the Sun is the ego, it's the personality, it's the identity, it's the spiritual energy inside of a person that wants to come out into the world and to be expressed. And Neptune dissolves, purifies, cleanses, it also spiritualizes, but it can also delude as well. And so when the Sun is opposite Neptune, this happens once a year. When that happens, there can be a sense of confusion or disillusionment, or just a lack of clarity, especially around the sense of self and the ego and the identity. So again, this can bring where we're just coming out of the Mercury retrograde period, and I'm going to talk about that more in a second, but it can feel kind of ambiguous. And then the Sun will trine Pluto later in the week, so that will bring things together more so that there is more clarity. But I just want you to know that, like, especially earlier in the week, if you're feeling a little bit tired or just not clear, that's totally normal. It's a great week to do any kind of imagination, creative work, or even dream work, or anything that allows for your creative juices to flow. That's a good way to use this energy. The other thing that's happening this week is Mercury is going direct. So Mercury retrograde will end. Yay! So this is happening at 28 degrees of Leo, which is really important. I'll talk about that in a second. On Tuesday the 5th at 4:30 a.m. Pacific time, 11:30 a.m. Universal time, and then that's at 9:30 p.m. Australian Eastern time. And so Mercury will station direct, and then it will start to move forward into Virgo right away. And it's important where Mercury is stationing direct, because it's exactly at the eclipse point. It's where we had our solar eclipse in Leo last week on the 21st. And so Mercury is like triggering this point. Like, it's really synchronistic and highly unusual that this is happening. So that's why this week, even though Mercury is going direct on Tuesday, it's still kind of like a pivot point. So it's not like a horse like rushing out of the gates. It's like, it's kind of like waking up from the dream, I think, is on Tuesday is what happens. Like Tuesday, we like wake up and we're like, oh, like what the fuck has been happening? And I have some tips for you to actually use this throughout the week. So all of that to say that Mercury will be direct. So, you know, things that you need to make decisions on, sign contracts and that kind of thing, I would definitely err on waiting towards the end of the week, because it is still a sensitive point, because it is just freshly direct, and because it's contacting the solar eclipse point. So that's that. The other thing that's happening, if that's not enough, is that we have a full moon in Pisces this week too. So this is on Wednesday the 6th, and this is happening at 12:03 a.m. Pacific time, 7:03 a.m. Universal time, and then 5:03 p.m. Australian Eastern time at 13 degrees of Pisces. And so this is like super duper Pisces moon, because the full moon is in the sign of Pisces, which is all about intuition, mysticism. It's about creativity and connecting with something that is higher than yourself, thinking about doing something for others as well as for yourself. And this full moon is also conjunct Neptune by like a degree, which is really close. And so Neptune has all of these other Piscean kind of energies that I was talking about earlier, where there's sometimes maybe a tendency to feel unclear or to get lost in other people's emotions, even to be very, very sensitive. And so this can be a very spiritual energy. It's great meditation energy, but it can also just feel a little bit murky or, again, unclear. And so this is happening on Wednesday. So I would be fully prepared to get some more downtime earlier in the week, and then to move forward and to move ahead and to be more productive later in the week. And so all of this being said, I have a really beautiful quote that I want to share with you that I feel like embodies all of this energy really sweetly, and then I'll share the tips with you. So this is from one of my favorite authors of the moment. He's a psychotherapist and a spiritual counselor. His name is Matt Licata, and he says, falling apart, holding it all together, then falling apart, then holding it all together again. Cycles of integration and disintegration, chaos and ground, stillness and activity, sanity and confusion, hopelessness and hope. As flows the natural world, the unfolding of the heart is alive and of the unknown. And so I love this so much for Neptune and then Pluto as well, because both of these planets, whenever they're involved, and if you're going through a transit involving Neptune and Pluto, this applies to you, because Neptune and Pluto are about dissolving the ego. They're about restructuring the sense of self. And so we all get to experience a little bit of this this week together. So like the quote says, sometimes things fall together and then they come back, and then they fall apart, and then you're reintegrating again. And this is really like the cycle of life. Things are always dying and falling away, and then new things are coming in and being built, and then it falls apart. And so I want you to embrace that this week, is what I'm saying. Is it's okay if things are falling away, especially because we're wrapping up this eclipse season where certain things fall away and then new things come in. And so the more that you can trust that process, trust that you're in the right spot at the right time, things are happening in the way that they're meant to. And I know that's totally cliche, but the more that we can not micromanage the process that we're going through, the easier it's going to be. So all of that being said, I have 3 tips for you to have an amazing week. And tip number 1 is to, kind of like I was just saying, tip number 1 is to be okay with not knowing. And so I say that this week because Neptune, like, you don't really know what's going to happen sometimes. And so I want you to be okay with that, because things will happen, and all that you need to do is to decide, okay, what do I need to do right now in this moment? And sometimes that's nothing. Sometimes that's just let it be. Of course, if you need to take action, you need to do something, you got to do what you got to do, but be okay with not knowing when the situation calls for it. So that's tip number 1. Tip number 2 is to journal about what you learned throughout the month of August. So I say this because August is our eclipse season. We also had a Mercury retrograde that was highly influential in the eclipse season. So there was a lot of again, with any eclipse, there's things that fall away and there's new things that come in. But there was another element of like reviewing and reanalyzing, and especially reanalyzing our creative energy because of the sign of Leo. And so these things that came up will continue to become more clear as the months unfold, but I want you to be proactive with that. So this week, it's a great time to journal, especially if you want to do that maybe on Tuesdays, like a little celebration for Mercury going direct, to journal about what it is that happened and what you learned from the month of August. And then tip number 3 is to put this into practice, to actually do it right now. So leave me a comment below and let me know, like, what came up for you in August. Was it batshit crazy? Was it cool as a cucumber? You know, what kinds of things happened, and what's your takeaway from it, most importantly? That's really what I want to encourage with the use of astrology, is that there's always something, like astrology, we're using it to take something away from the experience. We're using it to make meaning of what it is that we're going through. So I feel like I talked a lot in this video, more than normal, but it's kind of an intense week, a lot of things happening, and so I wanted to share that with you. So I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, please share it with a friend, because I love to get these messages out to as many people as possible. And if you want to know more about this astrology and go like super astro geek out on it, you can listen to the podcast that I co-host with my friend Mel of Energetic Principles. It's called The Feminine Principle: Astrology for Authentic Living, and I'll have the link below to iTunes. You can find it on iTunes. And then, of course, if you want to get a reading with me, I'm available for that too. My website is down right now. Thanks, Mercury retrograde. No, I'm not blaming it on Mercury retrograde. I'll try not to. So if you want a reading, email me and let me know, and we can talk about it. So I'm always here to support you guys, and I love hearing from you. So I'm sending you lots of love and wishing you an amazing week. Namaste.